We are now 236 days away from the midterms, and the president was on the road today to promote his economic agenda in the states of Ohio and Kentucky. Instead, he spent the day downplaying the Iran war as it continues to impact prices here at home. Watch just a bit of it.
We did a little excursion. We had to take this little few weeks of excursion, but it's been incredible. Our military is unbelievable, the job they're doing. I would say, to put it mildly, way ahead of schedule. Prices are coming down very substantially. Oil will be coming down. That's just a matter of war. That happens you can almost predict it. I would say it went up a little bit less than we thought.
You just said it is a little excursion, and you said it is a war. So which one is it?
Well, it's both. We're not leaving until that job is finished, and it's going to be very fast. It's going to be very fast.
Just a little excursion. My son's on a snorkeling trip today. That's an excursion. That, of course, came after he told Axios that the war would end soon because there's practically nothing left to target. But Iran has promised escalation. According to their state TV, they launched their most intense attacks yet. Earlier today, 3 commercial ships, I want you to see this, 3 commercial ships were attacked in the Strait of Hormuz, and Iran has taken responsibility for one. And just hours ago, 2 more tankers, you can see this on your screen right now, were attacked within Iraqi waters, deeper into the Persian Gulf. Iraq's state news agency told the New York Times that 1 crew member died and 38 were rescued. Their effort to block oil shipments from passing through the key trade route has now forced the International Energy Agency to approve the largest ever release from the emergency oil reserves. Does that sound like a little excursion to you? It does not to me. We're going to dive deeper into that later in the show in Money, Power, Politics. But right now, I want to bring in our nightcap. It's a great one. David Rode is here, MS Now senior national security reporter. John Avlon, journalist and host of the Bulwark podcast, How to Fix It with John Avlon. I highly recommend it. David Gura, host of Bloomberg This Weekend, their new fantastic show, and the Big Take podcast. And Democratic strategist Joel Payne. He was also a senior aide for Hillary for America and press secretary for former Senator Harry Reid. Mr. Rode, I want to start with you. The New York Times reports that Iranian military has been adjusting to the U.S. and Israel's tactics. According to senior U.S. defense officials, help us understand, because Trump is saying the place is demolished, there's nothing there. It sounds like it's the opposite. Just what is the truth, regardless of how you feel about the war?
Just today went very, very well for Iran. Many sort of trends are shifting in Iran's direction. That what you just talked about in the Strait of Hormuz, Iran has successfully stopped oil from flowing through the Strait of Hormuz. The United States Navy is not sending ships into the Strait to escort tankers because it's not safe. They've hit these 3 ships that you mentioned. Oil prices are rising, and we'll talk about this more. I've been haunted all day and thinking of these school children. The fact the United States has admitted what many people feared, that this was an American Tomahawk missile that killed 175 people, the vast majority of them elementary school students. It was not intentional. It was a mistake. But this is just, Americans will grieve and feel bad about it. People in the region will think it was an intentional effort to kill children. So just for today, I think Iran has got some momentum, sadly, and it's a terrible regime going in its direction.
David, does it seem like maybe the administration miscalculated how the Iranian regime was going to respond?
Definitely. And you hear the president talk about a schedule that's still kind of a mythic thing for all of us. We don't know.
And most particularly the Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah, and I think what's most important about what you just mentioned, yes, they're the ships that were in the Strait of Hormuz, but the ones that are in Iraqi waters indicate something that we've seen from the beginning of this war, that it's really widened beyond a very narrow geography. And I think that that's something that the administration clearly miscalculated. They thought that these strikes on Iran were going to be restricted to that geography, and they haven't. So as it's widened across the Middle East and brought in about a dozen countries, we now see it expanding to these other territorial waters as well. So just another indication of the fact that this is really, the horse is out of the barn, and they're having a really difficult time bringing it in or even trying to.
Trump is saying we're almost done. We're finished. Just tonight, I spoke to a whole bunch of bankers who said it's clear Trump wants to leave. This thing is almost done. But can it be?
No. I mean, this is wishful thinking on the part of the administration and those bankers. because it's not just politically inconvenient, it's economically inconvenient. But the only predictable thing in war is there will be unpredictable consequences. and you cannot contain this. If anybody thought you could contain this to a strike that took out the Ayatollah, as evil as that regime is and was, it wasn't paying attention to anything regarding history or geography, even really recent history. So, no, the chaos will continue, whether they want to declare victory, mission accomplished or not. And that's where the tragedies will start compounding.
Joel, Democrats are calling for public hearings on sort of the unclear goals and the timelines. Is that the way we're actually going to get the truth to the American people? Is that realistic?
I mean, I think that's part of the accountability that the public deserves and the public needs. And I think also you have to keep up the pressure on Trump and this administration to stop obfuscating, stop lying. I mean, David Rode, you talked about that horrific, unspeakable tragedy that befell those young girls in Iran. And the president just 3 days ago just lied to the American people about it. I mean, that's a horror. And the fact that we have this crisis of information, we have a president who you literally cannot trust the words that are coming out of his mouth.
And you think hearings will change that?
I think hearings are a part of that. I think that is a part of public pressure. You have to have people engaged in actually understanding why it is such a horror that the president is misleading them. You have to have the business community understand why it is not a good idea to not be able to trust the word of your president. You have to activate lots of different parts of society, and I think the accountability that will come from those hearings are a part of it, but that's not the end. That's the beginning.
But this is the twisted thing. I don't think the business community trusts the word of Donald Trump. What the business community trusts is the markets. And they know he might not listen to Democrats, he might not listen to Republicans, but if markets tank, he'll act on that.
We've seen him try to navigate that over the course of this war, and he's clearly had a very difficult time doing that. So, yesterday we had the Secretary of Energy tweet this post about how a naval vessel had accompanied a ship through the Strait of Hormuz. In fact, that hadn't happened. He took that tweet down. But in the meantime, we saw a radical swing in the price of oil. I mean, it's really, if you look back to Sunday and how much oil spiked because of fear that this was going to continue on and on and on. And then Monday saw it swing down once again. These are swings we haven't seen throughout history. I mean, there are huge swings in the oil market. So again, talking about how this has become something that he can't control, that's true in the markets as well. And I think that based on what we know about him, the attention that he pays to the market has to be something that's spooking him as well.
What have you heard about the possibility of boots on the ground?
So the other problem here, too, is if the president wants to declare victory, there's this problem. There's 1,000 pounds of enriched uranium that he said was why he had to launch these strikes that Iran still has. So, and this is something Israel also wants seized. So I don't understand how the president declares victory. I mean, it'd be a huge success for Iran. They would say, we stood up to the Americans, we survived, the regime is still here, we still have this enriched uranium. It's not enriched to a level where they can make a bomb, but they could recreate their program. And then China and all these other countries are watching this. It's the United States spends more on defense than every other country in the world, the top 10 combined, 3 times as much as China. And if the U.S. isn't able to topple this regime and sort of, eliminate this nuclear threat as Trump promised, it's a huge loss of face for Trump and for this country.
Can you say that's one of the most frightening facets of all of this? So we had the strikes in June, and we knew that some uranium was unaccounted for after all of that. We know from the previous Secretary of State, from Antony Blinken, that when they schemed all of this out, when they did war games, something that they thought could happen was that uranium could be kind of spirited to different parts of the country. So here we have a country that's clearly in a state of chaos. The bombing continues. And now we have to reckon with the fact that there could be all of this material scattered throughout the country. And I think that should give nobody any comfort to think that could be the case right now.
We haven't even talked about the cost. And look, this war is costing well over $1 billion a day. I saw a New York Times story earlier today that said...
I saw a brilliant New York Times opinion piece about the cost of this war. Do you know who wrote it? David's wife. David's wife. David's wife.
There we go.
I'm trying not to interrupt on this show, but I had to for that one.
I appreciate that. And David's wife, I'm sure, made an excellent point just about how expensive this is. When you think about the people in this country, it's so interesting, Stephanie. When you compare this to Iraq, 20 years ago. Iraq started in a different place. The public got to a bad place on it, but the public did not start underwater on Iraq the way they've started on Iran. I mean, this from day one has been a loser politically. And this has nowhere to go but down. The best day was the first day that the Ayatollah was killed.
Yeah, but I mean, in the case of Iraq, go back to the first Gulf War. There's a protracted period of selling it to the American people, making the case, right? In the case of the second Iraq War, it was in part, the patriotic surge after 9/11 made people more liable to believe, and obviously that was a disastrous decision strategically. There was no effort, pure arrogance, that you're going to campaign on ending forever wars, campaign on saying that Kamala Harris equals World War III, Trump equals peace, and then you're going to bomb 8 different nations today, launch an attack against Iran without ever making the case to the American people of why it's necessary. And now it's not only costing $1 billion a day, you can't put that back in the bottle. And the chaos and the impulsiveness, blundering out of wars is as much a problem as blundering into them. And at the same time, we do not have a Homeland Security apparatus that's fully focused on protecting the homeland. You've got, 20-year-old Heritage Foundation interns in charge of domestic terrorist policy at Homeland Security. You've got a lot of folks who were tasked with Joint Terrorism Task Force who've been focused on immigration enforcement. So this is not good for the United States of America. It is incredibly dangerous to have this kind of recklessness and arrogance and a complete failure to take into account the consequences.
Meanwhile, they're saying Cuba's next.
That's it's just the complete opposite of what President Trump promised the country. And I just go back to the economics, and the CEOs aren't worried. The Strait of Hormuz has been closed. That's 20% of the world's energy supply goes through that strait. Inflation, higher oil prices, and even with this release of all these barrels today, it's going to take weeks for this to turn around. This is incredibly serious stuff. So Cuba next? I don't think so.
Well, look, Cuba may very well fall because of a knock-on effect from Venezuela, and that may be a very good thing for the Cuban people.
Sure.
But as we learned, if you hadn't invaded Iraq, you could have focused on Afghanistan. We already decided to take out Maduro in complete contravention of basic international law, and if that has a knock-on effect of destabilizing Cuba, fine, stay focused on your hemisphere. That was the argument. But now we're dealing with global wars in multiple places. And anyone who thinks this can be contained, and meanwhile, the Secretary of Defense is off, trying to fire photographers for taking unflattering photos and spending $20,000 on lobster. I mean, this is not on task.
First, it's the Secretary of Excursion, not Defense.
Thank you for the nomenclature.
And secondly, just about Cuba, I was just going to say, Stephanie, Lindsey Graham is like the town crier running through anyone who will talk to him, saying that this administration is going to go and take out bad guys all over the world. So that's actually what Donald Trump now is following, you would have to believe, right? I mean, if Donald Trump has decided I can go to Venezuela, I can kidnap the leader of that country, I can go and decapitate the leadership in Iran, why wouldn't he think he could go to Cuba and do that? Why wouldn't he go and try to do that in other places around the world?
Because no one voted for him to do that. Do you remember what America First was about? Do you remember a year ago when DOGE was in place and they destroyed USAID? And they took developing country after developing country and said, yep, we're ending all of these programs. Why? Because it doesn't matter what's happening to children in the Congo. We need to pay attention to what's happening to children in West Virginia. If you're using that logic, how does any of these billions of dollars we're spending across the world, how does any of that make sense when you look at what we did 1 year ago?
There was no talk of excursions when he was on the campaign trail. You're right. He was focused on improving the situation here in the U.S. So I think that there...
And a lot of people buy into that.
And a lot of people bought into it, and it elevated him to the White House a second time.